we're turning our attention to the game of the weekend, possibly the game of the year. It's the All-Ireland football quarter-final preliminaries. It's Galway against Mayo. It's Salt Hill. It's Sunday. It's 3 o'clock, and I'm delighted to say to preview the game in the maroon corner, Gary Sice, and the red and green corner, Keith Higgins. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning.
That's our things.
We'll get into the game properly in a second, but is there any nagging feeling that no matter the outcome of the game on Sunday, that there's sort of significant doubts been raised about both teams, Keith?
I think so, yeah. I think if last Sunday had gone, I suppose, according to plan, as both teams would have liked, you're looking at a week's break here, clear up injuries, and both teams are probably Ireland contenders at this stage. You're kind of questioning both. So yeah, I think last Sunday had a big bearing on both teams. I think probably even just from a goal point of view with the injuries that they have, the fact that they've had that last week to kind of get them cleared up, there's doubts over a few players whether they be fully fit. And then from a Mayo point of view, all the momentum they had after that Kerry game I think is gone. So yeah, there's definitely question marks over both. What
do you think, Gary? Are they just both of them all still blown off the cobwebs at this stage of the year? There's more to come, or big doubts?
Oh, I think we're in big doubt territory now at the minute for both of them, especially after last weekend. I think kicking the ball for Galway, and we're talking All-Ireland contenders still, but now we have injuries to some major players, and we are going into a weekend against the old foe, and it's toss of a coin, and it's not the way things should have gone, because things were going so well before that. But it's definitely they're not in the contenders bracket at the minute based on last weekend.
Yeah, the teams obviously named last night, and Sean Kelly and Damien Comer both named in the starting 15. I watched Comer come off the bench in Mullingar a few weeks ago and sort of kicked 3 or 4 points, but limped around, looked like he might have come off again. And obviously Pádraig Joyce pulled the old switcheroo with him ahead of the Armagh game last weekend as well. Are they going to start? What's the word?
I think the things are very quiet. There's very, very little about it. I think they have to. I don't think there can be any shadow boxing this weekend. I think if Damien is good to go, if he's 60-70%, he has to play. I think we need to get them together, himself and Shane and Ian up front, and I think he'll cause problems even on one leg for Mayo at the weekend if that's the way things have to be. The problem you have then is going forward, what happens if we get over the weekend. As far as Sean Kelly goes, it didn't look good at the weekend. He came off in a boot, and he's probably pound for pound one of the best players in the country at the minute, top performer for us, and it probably can't be without him really. So everybody in Galway is hopeful, I'm sure, that he can participate at the weekend.
Keith, I suppose everyone talking about home advantage for this one, but I guess when you look at Mayo's record in Salt Hill, it's not half bad. John Fogarty's writing in the Irish Examiner this morning as well about even something as simple in Salt Hill as the importance of winning the toss. I think it's given a bit of rain and maybe some usual Salt Hill wind as well at the weekend. So I mean, how important is that home advantage, and even winning that toss as well, because it can be worth a few points?
Yeah, I think there's a few things in that. I think first of all, the fact that it's not in McHale Park, I don't think too many Mayo people will be complaining about that. Probably our record there, you look at the performances there over the last few years, probably haven't been great. Salt Hill, like you mentioned there, the conditions are definitely going to play a big part. And I remember having this conversation with Gary, I think before even the Connacht final, and if there's a bit of a breeze at all, you nearly kind of favour Galway. I just think they have better long distance kickers. You look at if Comer plays Walsh, if Tierney, Cook, Conroy, all those boys could easily pop balls from 40-50 yards with that breeze behind them. I'm not sure if Mayo have that kind of firepower even with the breeze, but conditions definitely do play a big part. The fact that it's in Salt Hill, I don't think it'll bother either team, to be honest, but I think more so just the fact that it's not in McHale Park would be a plus for Mayo at this stage. The performances there just haven't been great over the last number of years.
Killian O'Connor came through a club game as well, a full senior league game with Ballintubber last weekend. Keith as well, 2-6 scored against Ballinrobe, his first competitive game in 10 weeks. He of course has had that hamstring injury, so a good sign that he's back involved, and I'm sure raring to go. Yeah,
look, in fairness to Killian, anytime he's come back from injury, he's always been in decent shape. I suppose the one fear I'd have is, he played a club game for Ballintubber, but at the same time he hasn't kind of played any kind of competitive game at this level probably since I think the Roscommon game he came on for a few minutes in. So it'll just be that level of sharpness. Kind of, if you start him, I don't think he's got a full game in him, but he's competed at that level. If you bring him on, you're bringing him on in the heat of a battle in the Galway Mayo game, knockout championship. Will he be able to get up to the pace of that game as quickly as he needs to? So look, I think Killian's track record speaks for itself, but at the same time there is just going to be that bit of question mark, but there is a few cobwebs there whether he can get up to the pace of the game quick enough. I think fitness wise he'll be fine for 20 minutes, but it's just a matter of whether he'll be able to get up to the sharpness required. So suppose. But going back to Gary's point there, I think the big one for me is Sean Kelly. If he starts, Galway are probably favourites. If he doesn't, it's a big advantage for Mayo. I think, as you mentioned there, look, he's probably looking at, if Galway progress, he's probably looking at Player of the Year territory in fairness to Adrian Shane.
Yeah, he's incredible in full flight when he's going forward as well, apart from everything else. You mentioned on paper, Gary, that Galway full forward line is incredible. Talk to us about Shane Walsh, will you? Because, like, obviously the All-Ireland final last year was such a ridiculous benchmark that, like, in some ways you're destined to be hammered if you don't meet that mark every time you go out on the pitch afterwards. But hard to turn that on every day, and he hasn't turned it on in a Galway shirt since.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word ridiculous for what he did in Croke Park last year, because it was absolutely ridiculous. I'm not so sure there's a lot of footballers out there that have had a dream to do that, don't mind actually going to do it. So he did something ridiculous. There's a couple of things with Shane, and one of them is the club campaign he went through. And for Shane, it was probably the longest season he's done. He's 29 now, going 30 soon. I don't think he's ever done a full season like that. He had a break, obviously. He went away to Australia and whatever, but how much of an effect that had on him, I don't know. He hasn't shot the lights out at all, and to be quite honest with you, he was very disappointed last weekend in Carrick. Things that he does in his sleep he was very off, and even the striking of the ball, there was no consistency to it. The penalty, the 2 or 3, he one off the left, one off the right, they weren't consistent to anything he was doing, and I hope this weekend he's capable of just switching that off and turning on the magic again at the weekend. And I know Mayo will be very aware of that. How much of a sting will be in him, it will be interesting to see. I've no doubt that he's been talked to a lot this week, and they're going to explain to him that all he'll just be free, just go and play, and if they can get that out of him for 40 minutes, I think Galway will be fine. He is that important, and I think when Shane plays, it takes 2 to mark him. It maybe take 3. You might even have a system around him trying to slow him up and stop him up. He's that dangerous. And if that happens, then you've got Peter Cook, you've got Tierney, you've got Ian, you've got Damien, you've got Paul Conroy. Mayo will be aware of all this, and I think Shane is that pivotal to us. He's as important as Sean Kelly when he's in full flight, but we haven't seen that, as you mentioned. So as a Galway man, I hope to God Shane turns up for 40 minutes the weekend at Fair Stadium and does horrific damage if he can at all.
It's not even the terrible twins, it's the terrible trio, turns out, when they're all on song. Talk to us, Keith, a little bit. I'm reading Lee Keegan's comments during the week talking about Mayo's inability to see out games, to play boring football, he was calling it, to kill the game, to not be too cute. There's no shot clock, was how he had worded it. What does that all come down to?
We actually had this conversation yesterday with Lee, and again, you can't really kind of put your finger exactly what it was. I think we were kind of saying, you go back over the last probably 10 years with Mayo, probably since even James took over first, and it was just this kind of nearly all-out attacking type of football, that there was no really kind of defensive systems, there was no really kind of attacking setups or plays or whatever you want to call it. It was just get the ball and everyone goes, and you play at this high-tempo game, and in a way I think that's nearly kind of kept it through. It's nearly ingrained in lads at this stage now, that it's, as Lee said, we're not holding on to the ball for 2-3 minutes, just winding down, just kind of making things boring for the opposition and all that. And you look at the way Roscommon have adapted this year and the way they're playing, and sometimes you just need to do that, especially if you're 3-4 points up with 5 or 6 minutes to go. You just need to kill the game. Probably the best teams out there are good at doing that. They get the balance right, whereas we're just probably not at that level just yet. And whether that comes down to coach, whether that comes down to kind of players just not kind of thinking it through, a bit of naivety, I don't know what you want to call it, but sometimes you just have to be able to kind of, as Lee said, just win ugly at times and just kind of kill the game. And there's we're Mayo 6 points up, was a 10 minutes goal against Cork, and that's the type of that he's on about. That's where you should be, just kind of killing the game and just winning the next 10 minutes by a point, or losing by a point and still win the game by 5, whereas they just let Cork get that bit of craziness in the game, get that bit of momentum, and then it's kind of hard to kill. So I'm not sure it's something that can be done, fixed within a week, but it's definitely something they kind of need to bring in the game if they're going to be kind of pushing on towards All-Ireland finals or winning All-Ireland finals. Would you be worried that there wasn't enough communication in place for Aidan O'Shea? It seems to know that knock it over and we're through. Possibly, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure who's going to be, if people are on the line or listening to other games and see how things are going. I'm not sure whether they need to get that information to them quicker. I suppose at the time, with everything that's going on, it's just pure helter-skelter for the last few minutes. It's kind of hard to keep those kind of calm heads on the shoulders, but again, I wouldn't be overly concerned about that, to be quite honest with you. That's something that might only happen once every few years. I think it's the whole issue around conceding that 6-point lead is kind of where my concerns would be at, really.
Gary, Keith made the point there, he used the phrase making it boring. How important is it for both these teams to make the fixture boring in some ways? Because you could look at it on paper, Mayo, Galway, two rivals that, let's be honest, hate each other, knockout championship football. Like, if you think about the occasion too much, I guess it's for Bora Joyce and Kevin McStay, really, isn't it? Whoever manages the occasion more and makes it boring in players' heads, because you don't want to hype it up too much.
Yeah, I agree, and I think last weekend was another example of one of Mayo's biggest Achilles heel problems they have, is that Kevin Walsh was in the Cork dressing room, and he put this template together that was a complete and utter antidote to the chaos that Keith was talking about there. I think it was maybe 2015 or 16, we went to McHale Park, and we set up in such a way that we closed down the avenues of running, and we made them keep the ball. They didn't want to do it, they kicked it back to us, and then when we got the ball back, we kept it off them, and they didn't like it. And Cork did it for periods, not as well as they should have last weekend, but they did cause havoc for Mayo, and I think Louth did it for a little while as well. And Galway's system at the minute with a double sweeper and breaking out is exactly what Mayo don't want, and I think that's going to be a big problem for Mayo at the weekend. I'm not so sure where they're going to get 13, 14, 15 points if Galway do set up properly. So I do think as well in that missing Kieran Malloy, missing Liam Silk, if Sean Kelly doesn't play, then I'm not so sure how comfortable Galway will be in that system. But if they can get it together and slow that game down and make it boring, as you're talking about there, I think Mayo could have a serious problem in their hands.
One man who could get those points, Keith, I guess, is Tommy Conroy. Like 1-1 the last day. I know he came off the bench the last couple of times for James Carr. Is the argument there for him to start from the start, or is there, I guess, an argument in Kevin McStay's head that you need to finish with a stronger 15 in some ways?
Yeah, that's been Kevin's kind of mantra all year, is kind of finishing with nearly a stronger 15 than he has. I think the argument will probably be there to keep the full forward line the same with Aidan, James and Ryan. I mean, if Sean Kelly isn't fit, I think it throws up a question mark of who Galway put on Aidan, then who they match up with James. I think if Tommy starts, it's probably more of a natural matchup like Jack Lynn to go on him. So I think if you start with Aidan and James, if Sean Kelly isn't fit, it just throws up a few more question marks over the matchups in the Galway defence. I think you go back to Gary's point there, though. I mean, you know, we talk about Mayo struggling sometimes with a packed defence and all this, but like the reality was they were 6 points up with 10 minutes to go, whatever it was, the last day against Cork. You know, so they were doing okay. It's just, I suppose, when Cork had to throw off the shackles and go at it a bit more, that bit of craziness came into it, and Mayo just kind of weren't able to kill the momentum. That's the kind of bit I'd be concerned about. I know if Galway pack the defence and do what they did previous years and get their two wing backs dropping into those channels, it will cause them problems and see where the scores come from. But at the same time, I think Mayo got a small bit better at it. They're just not kind of quite at that level just yet. But yeah, look, the argument is there to start Tommy Conroy again. A lot of it will come down, I think, to conditions as well. You know, it sounds very simplistic, but if Mayo had ended up getting the breeze in the first half, they'd put in Tommy in the second half, then against the breeze, will they get enough ball from? It's just hard to know. There's so many ifs and buts to it, but I think they'll probably just go with the same full forward line again, keep James Carr in there and look to bring Tommy off the bench like they have been doing and kind of start with a stronger team.
Shane used the word hate there, very strong word.
Accurate.
What was that, sorry?
Shane, he used the word hate.
Yeah, I think that was actually brought up for me during the week as well, and I think I mentioned it as well in a different interview, but it is a strong word. Hate probably isn't the right one, but I think there is a big dislike in there. It's just a case of sometimes you just have to do whatever it takes to win those games, you know. You can't kind of comprehend losing to your biggest rivals, and it's the same with me with Galway and Roscommon because we're so close to both here on the border. But again, even the point you made there about taking kind of the emotion out of it, I think it probably would be a very cagey start. I mean, both teams would probably set up very similar. They'll get bodies back and it will be kind of cagey maybe for 40-50 minutes, but if it's tight coming down that last 10 or 15 minutes, that's when the emotions will come into it, and that's when you want the boys with the calm head. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, been an absolute belter. Gary, Keith, thanks a million.
Thank you very much.
Cheers,